Welcome back to another episode of Rob and Avis Ramble. What are we going to talk about today, Avis?
I don't know.
You don't know.
It's not my job.
That's always the theme. Avis doesn't know. I think I did give you a clue earlier because I showed you a video that was kind of going around. I don't know if I would call it viral. I don't really know what makes a video viral versus not viral, but it was something with the transformed wife. So, a couple things about that video, and I'll just say maybe about her in general, per my impression. There's things that she has said that I've agreed with. There's things that she said that I don't agree with. That's probably going to be true of pretty much anybody, right? We all are going to have a little bit slightly different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, even just today, I was trying to converse with her on a topic. You know, one of the things she talks about that kind of gets me going is the whole modesty thing, and talking about what, basically shaming women for dressing too tight, too short, too whatever, without actually setting guidelines for what that objectively means.
Yeah.
And she never really seems to have a good answer for that, which, I don't know. But there's other things she said that I'm like, yeah, I would agree with that. Right. So and basically the picture I'm trying to paint is like, I don't think I want to talk about this in the point of like, I'm not trying to attack her or anything. Right. She's welcome to her point of view. And, I just to say that like, I'm kind of neutral about her, I think. But, anyway, so this video is, kind of going around. A lot of people were posting it and reposting it. And well, first off, I'll say I noticed there was a watermark on it that was like the friendly atheist or something.
Oh, really?
So,
I missed that.
Yeah. So I think, and just kind of looking at the video and it's cutting and it's jumping, right? And everything. So it's been edited. I don't know, like, are we kind of getting the full context, or has this kind of been creatively edited to make her sound like she's saying something that she's not? So, I personally, if I knew where the whole video was unedited, I'd kind of like to see it just to see if, if what she is saying is really the right context, or if there's more context that wasn't shared.
I did have questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I was going to think we should maybe just get into and talk about based on what we did hear her say. But I just want to say up front, like, maybe we don't have the full context, right? Yeah. And I fully recognize that video was edited. And, sometimes people do some kind of dirty things to try to edit something to make it seem like someone was saying something they weren't really saying, right?
Was she active in the comments?
Not on anything I saw.
Okay. Interesting.
I saw, I saw quite a few people reposting it and, sharing their comments about it and kind of, just saying it getting lended. I think what I saw most people saying was they felt like it lended, a good insight into her and kind of what they're deeming her misery. So, again, and I have, on some of the things that she has said that I've seen her say, and they weren't edited, just posts she's made. I've kind of had that same impression myself at times, that she just kind of, I don't know where she's coming from. Right.
Yeah.
So, so in the context of the video, she was saying basically that she didn't marry her husband out of love, right? She wasn't.
Right.
And I think she even went as far as say she wasn't really attracted to her husband.
Right. There was no physical attraction. There was no excitement, no butterflies, which led me to my first question.
Right.
Why did they get married?
Right. So if that, right, and maybe that's part of the context in the edited video that was left out, that would kind of be interesting to know. But
I'm here for that answer. I want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll tag her in this and when we post it and see if she would like to chime in and let us know that. And also, hey, if you decide to give this a listen at all, and you can tell me where the full video is, we'd love to see it in its full context. I think that'll only be fair.
Yeah.
But anyway, if It wasn't actually that. I mean, it's kind of shocking to hear her say that, but also not, because we've known someone that was in that situation, right? And
yeah, but I think most of the people that we know that enter into a marriage under those kind of pretenses, it's like a second marriage.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've known anybody outside of an arranged marriage that has married somebody for seemingly no reason at all. I mean, why? That's, first of all, why did she marry him? And like, why?
Yeah.
Why? If you have none of these feelings that you think you should have, they've been married, I think I saw 44 years. They're coming up on 44 years.
Something like that, 40-something years.
Okay,
yeah.
so, I mean, she's not that old. So they've been married quite a large, I guess what I'm getting at, right. So they were young. So like, I just don't, like, that's my biggest question.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I can discuss all of the other issues, but like, why did you get married?
Yeah, some context around that would be helpful, right?
Very helpful. Yeah.
Was it because, I mean, like, I don't know if it was like an arranged marriage or something, or her.
I mean, like, we've been watching Game of Thrones, or join two houses. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
It just seems weird.
Yeah. But not completely unheard of. But I think what you're saying is, in at least in the instances that maybe you're thinking of more than me, I can only think of one of, and kind of the circle of people we've known, where they basically married. They weren't attracted to the person they married, but they married them anyways, and that was out of why?
Security
for
the woman.
For the woman, yeah.
Because the woman, and I know of a few more cases than you maybe, but the women have always been a higher rating than the men. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, so they were physically maybe more attractive than the man they were marrying. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the men, it was a good thing because they were marrying hot chicks, and for the women, it was a good thing because they're getting the security that they were lacking in some other way.
Okay. And so for them, it was kind of like, and were these were women that were maybe a little bit older?
Yeah. Second marriages. Even
okay.
Third marriages.
Yeah. I mean, the one I'm thinking of for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if these others examples. So in all the ones you're thinking of, they were older, right? So they're kind of maybe getting to that point. They're like, hey, I need to get on with somebody.
Yeah. I just had a conversation with a friend who thought that she would grow up and get married, and through a turn of events, she got into her 30s and she was like, oh, wait, I'm not getting married. I need to figure out how I'm going to fend for myself here. Yeah. Like, she was just doing, odd jobs that you might do until you get married if you expect to be a married person, and then like kind of woke up to this idea of, oops, I think now I need a career.
That didn't work out. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Okay. So women, I guess, do at times marry for just security, right? It's just like, it's kind of their best option and they take it, which I think is part of, the argument, or the kind of the downside a lot of men will say to marriage is because they don't really know fully the reason that a woman is marrying them, right? So maybe the woman is like, hey, this is the best option I've got right now. I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Right. And then meanwhile, they're like, I'm going to take it until something better, if something better comes along. And if something better doesn't come along, then I'll stay put. And I think in this example that I was thinking of, actually, it didn't end up playing out that way. The husband actually ended up having an affair.
Yes.
And so, that marriage ended anyways.
Yeah. I think a lot of women, like you say, until something better comes along, but at a certain point in time, I think when women marry for security, like, that security has to go away, not like something better needs to come along because they've already like picked the good situation. Like, they're in it for the situation, not the looks of the man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, But I think where I was going is that, but not all women do that. Some women do kind of marry and then they seemingly, hey, I got a better deal and I'm going to take it. And they just took the man along for a ride.
I was just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's the case sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah, not all that. Well, nothing is ever 100% either way, right?
Yeah.
So getting back to the transformed wife. So we don't know the context of.
No. And it's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
I'm I'm such a
young.
nosy person.
She married this individual for some unknown reason, not attracted to them. And then again, I'm probably going to keep saying this. I mean, this is an edited video, so I don't know all the context.
Yeah.
But she goes on to say that, kind of the first 20 years of their marriage was not good. It was just pretty miserable.
And I believe that even out of the context with the edited video, because I have paid attention to her stuff for a while now, and she's been very open about that. That's her transformed wife. I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah. So that's not. So you kind of think maybe edited. That wasn't necessarily something that was like, that is kind of her deal. She's like, hey, I used to have this bad relationship.
Yes.
And kind of transformed myself, and that's what I'm basically trying to share with the world is what our marriage looked like.
Yes.
To do that. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think, that is completely appropriate and okay. I mean, you and I aren't really doing anything different sitting here and talking about this, right? I mean, I think people need to share the things that worked in their marriage and the things that are working in their marriage, so that, people can just kind of insight, like these marriages that have been around a while, like what do they look like and what's working for them. Where I think it starts to go off the rails is if you are kind of shaming people for not doing exactly as you did, or giving them some kind of advice that maybe isn't objective in nature. Maybe it's subjective advice, and then shaming them when they don't follow your subjective advice. Right? And I think that's where I start to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And
I try to be very transparent too. When you say like you're the leader, you make the decisions. That doesn't mean I don't pout about it. And I've been open about that.
Sure. Yeah.
So like I don't, just because I know that's how it should be rationally doesn't mean that I don't respond emotionally first.
Always, exactly. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I think, and that's all. I forget, I don't know where I was going with this now, but with
her and the way that she shames women.
It feels at times like she's shaming people, right? And it's one of the same problems I have with Pearl Davis, right? Again, like Pearl Davis, I don't know her personally. I don't know the transformed wife personally, right? There's I'm sure there's plenty of things I would know if I knew them personally, but the things that I see them sharing on social media seem to be very shame-based in a lot of ways, right? It's like, hey, rather than just saying like, hey, here's how I see it. Here's what's worked for us. Here's, my observations about what's working for other people. And, hey, maybe it's something you want to consider, versus saying, hey, if you don't do it this way, you're not obeying God. If you can't objectively say that. If you can objectively say that, I'm all for it, right? And even then, we shouldn't be shaming people, right?
Yeah.
Our job is not to shame people. Jesus came to rescue people from shame. It's not our job to shame people. Yeah. Right? But we can share the truth.
Yeah.
But if it is not objectively true, right, there are gray areas. Don't shame people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's in this marriage that is miserable for 20 years, and then I guess she has some kind of transforming realization.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a light bulb moment or like that part of the story I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
how she switched.
And it wasn't in the video, and that's kind of why I'd like to see the whole video. Like, maybe the full context is there. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I think what she kind of goes on to say, and which is what I really think got most people kind of spun up. And at least a lot of the comments and reposts that I saw of it was that, she was saying that love is not a feeling.
Right.
So
that's what got people spun up, not the now I'm going to church to learn in quiet submission.
Yeah.
I thought that was a weird statement for her. Anyways, I digress.
But yeah, she man, I'm like losing my voice. I mean, I'm on the, when I work, I'm on the phone like a lot all day, right? So like sometimes we come in here to do this and I'm losing my voice.
Not me. I don't talk to anybody.
Yeah. Anyway, wow.
Whoa.
What was that?
I don't know. 14-year-old
Like
Rob?
puberty moment or something. So anyway, so she said love is not like a feeling. And I think that can be kind of a nuanced topic.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are times that, you do things out of, I almost want to say an act of love, not because you feel love. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily have a problem with her saying that. Again, maybe we didn't get the full context.
Yeah.
Was she saying that she didn't love her husband for 20 years? I'd say, okay, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And maybe in some ways I should say, I guess, kudos to you for sticking it out anyways.
But my question is, why did you go there in the first place?
Right.
Still.
I know that goes back to it.
Yeah.
But it is love. Like if you're married and it ebbs and flows, right? I mean, that is the really, I mean, again, very shocking to me if somebody says, hey, they had an ebb and flow that lasted 20 years where I didn't feel any love.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Man, that's a long time and that's tough, right? I mean, I don't know. If that is true, I find it even kind of more impressive that they managed to stay married just out of sheer grit. And maybe her and her husband have a great relationship now. And I think, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, right? Because she does kind of come off at times as this kind of angry, whatever, but you don't really know what's going on with people, right? Like I hope we don't come across as angry or anything, but people would have no idea. We could be like hating each other when we're not sitting in front of these mics and they wouldn't really know because you don't have insight into people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. So I recognize that. So maybe she's not kind of as angry as she sounds or seems to be at times.
Yeah. I know she has some health issues and that keeps her very inside. And she does, like, she eats this like soup that's supposed to be really good for her because of this.
Yeah. Well, I think people have
issue.
other things going on in their lives that we just don't know, right? So back to, does love ebb and flow? Does the feeling of love ebb and flow, right? Because I think love is as much of a commitment, and maybe it's more of a commitment than it actually is a feeling. I mean, I hope that you are in love with your spouse, right? But there are, it's just the reality. Stuff's gonna happen at times, and you're gonna get like upset with your spouse, right? Do you still love them? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's both a verb and a noun.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is like you're not always gonna have because I think one of the things that was mentioned was like butterflies. Like she didn't have butterflies, right?
Yeah.
And you're not always gonna have that, right? I mean, that is the reality.
Yes.
Because, it's kind of like when your spouse has done something that's made you really, really, really angry, I don't think you're gonna have butterflies around that. Right.
No,
and
not the happy kind anyway.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you're gonna have to work through it.
Yeah.
And I would hope that in short order, those feelings of love work through it because you're going to do what? You're going to have the hard conversation.
Right.
Right. Because you love your spouse. It's like an act of love. Like you're operating on the principle of love, not necessarily because you feel it. Right.
Yeah. But I still I don't know. I'm really hung up on the why did they get married? Because I know if one of our kids came to us and they were like, hey, I'm dating this person, but I don't find them attractive. I don't get excited when they come around. I would be like, so why are you dating? Like, why did she continue to date him? I mean,
so you're perfectly leading me into where I was kind of wanting to drive this conversation a little bit, which is they have kids, right?
They do.
Yeah. So did they kind of power through this because of their kids. Like maybe like she, like she felt the butterflies and felt the love for her kids. And again, we don't have the context, so I don't know.
I don't think her kids are that old.
So you think the kids weren't really a thing in these first 20 years?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on Lori Alexander, but I feel like her kids are 30 years or younger, leading me to believe that for maybe 10 to 14 years.
They didn't have them. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't know. That's just speculation.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I know that her grandchildren are still very young.
Yeah.
And I just recollecting on what I know about her, I don't feel like her kids are like in their 40s.
Yeah. Because again, I don't, we don't know her background, but I just kind of drawing on our own experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we came from divorced families, right? I think anybody, the 2 or 3 people that listen to this, they, if they've kind of listened to all the things we've said, we've shared that before, right? So, my mom's been married several times. My dad was married several times. Your dad's been married twice. Your mom's married twice now, right? So, we kind of coming as children out of that, had some insight into just kind of what the carnage and so forth can be from divorce.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of with that knowledge, in our relationship and us having kids, we would not want to put our kids through that carnage. Right.
Right.
Which is like another reason why you kind of make the commitment to have the hard decisions and work through the things. Maybe when that love is ebbing and flowing a little bit, to get back to that place.
Yeah.
So, that's why I was kind of asking, was that one of their motivators? But if you think kids weren't later in life, maybe not.
Yeah. I don't get the impression that it was marriage and then kids based on what I could be totally wrong. But I don't get that impression.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost wish we could have her on the podcast now. I don't know if she ever would. I would have to refrain from driving into this objective versus subjective topic because it drives me insane the way she sees some of this stuff. But it would be really interesting to hear her backstory, right? Because I want to, again, I just want to stress, even if you don't agree with her, and there's things I do not agree with her on, there's things that you do not agree with her on, it doesn't mean that these people sometimes don't have some glimpses of wisdom to share with people, right?
No, she's been married for coming up on 44 years.
Yeah, she's been married for 40 plus years, right? 44 years, right? Somehow, if you are in a relationship and you want to make it work, she probably has some, valid things to say that are probably useful and helpful, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I
and
get
who's her husband? Is he on X?
I have no idea.
Is he on any kind of social media?
I have no idea.
Well, I've always found that a little bit mysterious as well.
Yeah. No,
Who is this man?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. So,
yeah, I mean, 44 years of marriage doesn't happen by accident. And it's not just her, which again is why I ask about her husband. I mean, he seemingly survived 20 years of a loveless marriage.
Yeah. Was he attracted to her? I mean, that would also be kind of an interesting component of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, talking to her would be interesting, but talking to the two of them
together,
if they were honest and open, would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So what else was said there? I mean, I think, is that kind of covering the gist of the video? I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. I mean, I think the love thing was, like I said, that was the thing that got people kind of the most spun up. So I don't know. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit more.
Again, I just don't know why you continue dating somebody if you're not attracted.
For you, it all goes back to, why did they get together in the first place? That would help you understand.
I need to answer that question.
Yeah, that would help you understand the context.
I'm going to lose sleep at night.
Don't do that.
Yeah, because we were set up. I mean, we knew of each other, but we weren't friends. We didn't hang out. So it wasn't a blind date, but it was kind of like we were set up by a friend.
Yeah.
And I came home from that date and my friend was like, how was it? And I was like, that's the man I'm going to marry. I knew deep inside of me Like I was attracted to you, and then like, sure, we'll call it butterflies. And like, I just don't understand why, if you didn't have that immediate,
Like, what was the draw in the first place?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that's extreme. Like, I'm not the only person to have gone on a date and been like, that's the man I'm going to marry, and then you go on to marry them.
It's funny
but
that you mentioned that, because I have heard you mention that before, and I just saw a post on X. I can't remember who it was or where I saw it, but it was someone basically saying, it was some girl saying, if you don't feel like, the first date you're with someone, that's the man you're going to marry, like, it's not the man for you. So it's kind of funny for me to hear you say that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it needs to be the first date.
Yeah,
like that's a little bit extreme.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think like there needs to be some initial attraction.
It is kind of a really like interesting thing, because here's you and I mean, we haven't been together 44 years. We're just not old enough to do that yet.
Yeah.
Right. But we've been together since we were young. I mean, we were 18, 19 years old, and, which is about as young as we could have been legally, right, to be together, unless we were like dating as teenagers or something. But, so you kind of like, or, like we had this attraction thing, right?
Well, I did. Did you?
Yeah, sure. I was attracted. Yeah.
Why? Did you see my hair?
Yeah, I know you had that. It wasn't the craziest. Yeah, I just had one of those I can fix her moments. No.
It was really bad, people. My hair is really bad.
Yeah, your hair wasn't the best, but I liked a lot about you, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And hair's we seem to talk about hair a lot on here.
It's important.
Yeah. So, but I mean, hair's that's easily remedied, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of overlook that, and we had plenty of discussions. Early on is our kind of maybe first putting our toe in the like learning that we had to have the hard discussions about. I was like, hey, like I'm not really crazy about what you're doing with your hair. Do something different, right?
Yeah.
But so us kind of coming from that, like we were attracted to each other. Things we loved about each other. We felt love. All those other things.
Yeah.
And we're here 30 plus years later. But then you have her saying that those things were not there.
Right.
But here they are, still there 44 years later.
Why, Ron? Why did you do it?
Right. But I think all I'm getting at with that is it doesn't necessarily, I guess it's not like you're not gonna like fail your marriage just because maybe you didn't come out of your first date saying, hey, this is like the man I'm gonna marry or woman I'm gonna marry, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously people can still make it work.
I think here we have the bell curve. I'm on this extreme and she's on this extreme, right? Like there's room in the middle.
So people are bashing her again based on an edited video that we don't know the full context of.
Right.
I mean, is it appropriate?
To bash her?
Yeah, I don't know that it is. Yeah. I almost feel I mean, she's almost to be applauded in a way, right? Like if you believe in commitment, right? If you look at marriage, the institution of marriage, and you say, hey, it is a lifelong commitment, and come hell or high water, we are gonna make this thing work, however we can make it work.
Yeah.
Right. Then and if that's what they did as a couple, then I think that deserves to be applauded.
Yeah.
So her name is Lori.
Lori.
Okay. So Lori, if you listen to this, I hope that you hear me saying that, right? Because there are still things I'm probably going to disagree with you on, and that's okay, right?
Yeah. People disagree.
But I do applaud you, if that kind of was your like, hey, like we see this as an institution that we're going to make work one way or the other because we're going to make the commitment.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of married couples would be good to kind of have that, because if we're getting too wrapped up in our feelings, well, you're going to have those ebbs and flows. You are going to have a day where you are just not going to really feel like all that excited and in love with your spouse. That is the reality.
Love is a choice.
And if you can't get past that because you lost the feeling, well, I don't know that you're really going to make any marriage work.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I mean, you have to stick it out through the hard times, and, you have to choose love every day.
Yeah.
Some days it's easier than others.
Yeah.
So, like I make your breakfast in the morning, whether I'm mad at you or not.
Every morning. Yeah. Sometimes I check it for glass. Sometimes I don't.
No, you don't.
Just kidding. No. Yeah, I don't do that. No. Yeah. I mean, that's just the reality, right? I mean, we're two different individuals. We're, obviously we care very much about each other. We have a great time. We have a great relationship.
Yeah.
But we're just going to see things different at times.
Yeah.
And that's going to be every relationship.
You're a man. I'm a woman.
Yeah. I've noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think you just, commitments, it matters. The commitment matters.
It does. Yeah. And not to beat a dead horse, but it's the hard conversations, because just burying it is not.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never going to go away.
Nothing gets buried in a marriage. I can tell you that. You may think you bury it, and you may bury it for a period of time. It will come back. Yeah. So you might as well just deal with it when it needs to be dealt with. And as we've shared before, as we've been talking about our relationship, based on our experience, you're not going to get that all right the first time. We didn't, right? These are things we had to figure out over time. So, maybe like our initial gut reaction was, well, we'll just bury it, right? Yeah. And then we're going to learn over time, well, it keeps coming back, right?
Yeah.
And now we don't really do that.
Yeah.
Right. We, if something's come up and there's a hard conversation that has to be had, we go ahead and have it and we figure it out. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's, a 10-minute conversation and, you walk away crying, and gather yourself and come
crier,
back.
Though.
You cry. I know you cry. Yeah. I don't want to make it sound like I'm like, you just cry. That's just you.
Yeah. I cry so often the kids don't even pay attention to it anymore. I mean, that's how much I cry. They're just like, oh, that's my mom.
You do cry pretty easy. You cry when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're
happy, sad, angry, whatever, hurt. Yeah. Think I should be hurt, but I'm not actually hurt. I might still cry.
Yeah. Yeah. But just meaning like, you may have to take a minute to go gather yourself up. Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so where, and that's sometimes, like I was saying, that happens in the first 5 or 10 minutes of having a hard conversation and you get through it. And sometimes they last for days, weeks. You got to kind of have these conversations and sort these things through.
That was actually one of the things that took us some time to learn, me about myself and you to accept when I'm just like, okay, I can't discuss this any longer. Like I need a break.
Yeah.
So that was a steep learning curve.
Yes. Yeah. Which is not my personality at all.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, let's get in there. Let's have the hard conversation. And, it's a fight until it dies.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not you at all. Sometimes you're like, I just can't take it. And maybe that's not just you. Maybe that's all women. I mean, I've only ever been married to one of you, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
We have friends that I talk to, and I think it's kind of a fairly common trait, right? Women are definitely more emotional than men, and men
it's just
are kind
exhausting.
Of willing to power through a discussion. But you're right. I mean, it is something that can just kind of me, especially kind of learning to show a little bit of grace in those situations to you, to say, okay, I realize you are not me. You were far more emotional than I am. Mm-hmm. And, if you need a minute or a half a day or a day to kind of regroup yourself and continue the conversation, to be okay with that. Because I wasn't always okay with that.
No. And I think that made some hard conversations, arguments.
Yeah. It really could have been hard. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's learning. And I think that's why I like this, to try to just share what our journey and what's been working. And
I think it's
go ahead.
You got it. I think people need to understand.
Yeah.
You are not going to figure it all out immediately. And just because you hit the first rocky patch or the 30th rocky patch or the 100th rockiest patch, and you're like, that's it, it's over.
And that was just the first month. No.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. It's not, right? And if you are willing to push through, have the hard conversations.
Well, and two, I think for us, coming from divorced families, I didn't have a good role model, and I don't think you did either. No. Really, from from the having the hard conversations, from the healthy relationships. Very few people in my life I can think of that been married my whole life. Mm-hmm. so I think that made for us really coming through it much, much harder because we really were just sort of reading, winging it, trying,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to the point, at one point, it's kind of a funny story we like to tell people now, but, 5-7 years in, I mean, they talk about kind of that 7-year itch. I don't really know there was an itch, but, we were getting, we were having a difficult moment. Not to say we had great times leading before that but you have times that are more difficult than others, right? And somewhere in that like 5-7 year, I can't remember exactly when it was, we had one of those moments and we were like, okay, well, in our commitment to work through this, we're going to go get some counseling.
My idea.
Yeah, your idea. Yes. So
that's what people did.
That's what people did. Right. I know. Yeah. I mean, your father and stepmother were doing counseling. I remember that at the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. And you were like, let's go get counseling. So I was like, all right, well, we're trying to make a commitment to this. So we'll have a discussion. So we show up in this counselor's office, we sit down and, she basically is like session 1. She's like, tell me, just give me your backgrounds. Tell me where you guys came from. So you kind of share your family history and kind of just, what, life was kind of like before we got into a relationship and, just kind of all that. And then I shared from my end and all like the divorce carnage and everything from both sides and all that sort of stuff. And, at the end of the session, she basically said, well, I'm just going to give it to you straight. People that have been through what you've been through, you guys aren't going to stay married.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
No.
That's the reality. And I still wonder to this day. I mean, we basically were like, okay, thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
We're going to leave. But like, I do look back, like, was that some kind of weird reverse psychology? Like, what was that?
Bad.
It was bizarre.
I don't know.
It was a bizarre situation.
Yeah.
So,
was she new? Maybe she was a new therapist, and
maybe
she's
like, I can't help these people.
I read this book, and you guys don't stay together.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But hey, here we still are, right? So I don't know where I was going with that. I just tell these stories, and I lose track of what was happening.
Well, you're talking about. Oh, well, I was talking about learning because we didn't have any really good role models.
Yes. Thank you. I think that's where we got into that story. Just kind of saying that the therapist agreed with us. She was like, yeah, you guys are screwed.
I was telling that story the other day. People are always shocked. She said, what? And I was like, yeah. And we paid for that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, not everybody has great role models, and sometimes you got to figure that stuff out. And I would love to say, go to your local church, they are going to help guide you through that. But that's not necessarily true, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of people in churches giving bad advice. There are plenty of people shaming people and giving them all sorts of other baggage that they didn't walk in the door with. Again, that's not all churches. Okay, right? I want to make sure I'm clear about that. It's not all people that are Christians, all those sorts of things, but you will find some of that. So like kind of coming into a marriage, you're not like, I guess what I'm saying is like, where do people turn for help?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So if they're coming in and they kind of had this weird background that didn't give them a lot of preparation for marriage, maybe they don't have, a good kind of someone in their life, whether it be a church or friends or a senior person to kind of lead them and kind of help them through. How do they figure it out? And I kind of feel it a little bit like that was us, right? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I remember before we got married, the pastor had a requirement for marriage counseling, and I was like, marriage counseling?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Like, I was like, you just do it. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why do we need counseling? And he was like, you got to talk about finances and who's cleaning the bathroom. And I was like, huh, okay.
Yeah. Because I don't really think that was like you and I, we just started dating and then we just never really stopped hanging out. And in marriage, like, I'm like, I think we just kind of decided like, hey, we're just going to be together and we're just doing life from this point, right?
Yeah.
Which is something I kind of like to call spiritual marriage. But, that same pastor, kind of being young, impressionable, 20-something, young 20-something, at the time, like very young, 20 something, like maybe
Yeah.
20, 21.
I was 20.
Yeah. So he came to us and he was like, you are living in sin.
Yeah.
You need to get married immediately.
Yeah.
Like, or you're, I can't remember what he said, but like basically hellfire, brimstone kind of stuff. Right. So we kind of found ourselves in a situation where I had asked you to marry me.
We
got
had been engaged for 3 years.
Yeah. Right. Which again, I think kind of the point I'm making, it was like, we started hanging out. I was like, hey, I enjoy hanging out with you. I love you. You enjoy hanging out with me. Here's a ring, like this is like my intent to marry you. But then kind of actually going through with getting married, like it wasn't a priority. I was like, why? Like I've already made the commitment in my mind. You made the commitment in your mind. And, so this pastor that we kind of got tied up with and came down on us, giving us the shame and the whole thing of like, so we kind of found ourselves like one day we're not married. And then 2 weeks later we're married because he was like, you're getting married today.
Yeah.
Like,
basically.
And being young and impressionable, we were like, okay.
Yeah. We were kind of forced into it. Not that we weren't going to do it, but the timing was forced.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
they rushed us after 3 years.
They did. I mean, I still wonder, like, would we actually be legally married? I think we'd still be right where we are if we weren't. And as I've gotten older, for reasons, I'm not actually a big proponent of state recognized marriage anyways. It's a godly institution, not an institution of the state. And I think the state causes a lot of problems. Another whole topic.
Yeah.
But
I do though think that like we lived together before we got married. I do think there is something to, even if it's just a spiritual marriage, some sort of little ceremony, because
I'm not
people were like, oh, it's just the same. Like you were living with them yesterday and now today you're living with them, but you're married. And I was like, it's weird, but it's different.
Yeah.
Like there's a level of covenant that was different.
Yeah. Let me clarify. I'm not against a ceremony at all. Like, I just don't think the government should be handing you a license that says, okay, now you're married, right? Yeah. None of the government's business, in my opinion.
I've been known to say engagement is just dating with a pretty ring on your finger. I mean, it's not permanent.
Yeah.
Right? Like you still can walk away from that with no, I don't want to say with no consequences, because there's consequences to everything, but it's not like you're not breaking a covenant with God.
If what?
If you're engaged and then you decide like that's not happening.
I don't know that I would agree with that. I guess if you're engaged, I
you're not yet married.
You're not yet married.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you haven't taken vows before God. I guess I guess I was thinking more in the context of, I mean, a lot of people, they get into a relationship and they're having sex, right? They're kind of already becoming one flesh.
Yeah.
And that was us. I mean, admittedly, right? I mean, we weren't, we were obviously not together for 3 or 4 years before we got married and not having sex. I mean, that was happening. We were 18 and 19-year-old kids, right? I mean,
but that was also happening before engagement. That's why I say engagement is just sort of dating with a pretty ring. Like I still think you can walk away from that. Like if you learn something new about the person, like, cause you're not yet married. You disagree?
Well, I just feel like what is I mean, you're making commitment to that person. And I think,
it's a statement of intent to a person. It has nothing to do with God yet.
And you're kind of being like one flesh.
But you're having sex before that.
I understand that, but you're in a relationship like a married person, right? I mean, really, what is any different? You're saying the difference is there was no ceremony, but everything else was the same. And you kind of said it yourself. People are like, are things really different? Everything's the same. Now you just have a certificate from the state that says you're married. And I would kind of agree with that.
I claim it's different. It was different. I feel like it was a different feeling.
Okay. I don't know that I experienced that, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in your mind as the man.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't have any intent of leaving. I'm just saying that I feel like maybe from the woman's point of view, like the official act of the marriage, whether it's just in ceremony or if it's in state, like whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
It has an effect on your mental being.
Maybe that's just a woman thing. Yeah. I didn't I feel like the commitment was made way before any ceremony in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I was committed But if friends have asked me, I don't think you're tied into anything when you're engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think you want to, this would be a lot simpler, I think, if people stopped having premarital sex. Right. And I say that as someone, and easy for me to say, right? Because like I'm married now. I mean, I can get we have all the sex I want to have. Right.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But, it really is kind of like, it's easy to see why it complicates everything.
Yeah.
For young people. Right. Because I think that is the, like, if you are just engaged and you're not having premarital sex, I would be a lot more agreeable to say, okay, yeah, like, I mean, you're just dating, right? But when when you jump into sex kind of right away, like you're taking it a step further.
Okay, so corner question.
Yeah.
People date and have sex all the time.
I know.
So they're like practically married, is what you're saying?
Well,
you have sex with somebody and like that's it. You're participating in the marital bed.
You are bonding with that person in a certain way.
Okay, interesting. So we know people that date, like they've been married like 85 times, or wow, that's a really high number. I don't know why I said that.
I don't know if we know anybody's. Maybe I don't know.
I don't really know.
Yeah,
I don't date.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was a high number.
Yeah, but I think,
all right, we'll knock that down. 20.
This is like an aberration of what's supposed to be, and that's why it's a corner question. And like, I don't think these are questions that are ever supposed to necessarily be answered, right?
Yeah.
Because ideally, you would. You're kind of like once you start having sex, you're in a committed,
So I guess that's my question to you, because you're saying no, like once you're engaged, that's it. Like you've sort of entered that covenant of marriage. But like, what if you're dating, but you're not engaged yet? So like you're dating, you're having sex, but you're not engaged, no covenant. Like, but then as soon as the man gives you a ring, like then like you might as well be married from that point on. What's your breaking point there, Rob? Like, when can you break up with somebody and it's like you're not breaking any spiritual covenants?
I think a lot easier question to answer if you're not having sex.
Yeah, but they are having sex.
Yeah. So I would say you have already displayed your intent to be married to that person.
Okay.
I know that's not how a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And but I would say that, I think just being an older individual, a little wiser in my years, a little more knowledge under my belt, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I would see it.
I
realize that is not in reality of what actually happens in the world.
Yeah.
But I would say in the ideal situation, I think that's how it should be.
That leads me back to 19-year-old Rob having sex with his now wife. You were like, oh, we had sex, we're going to get married.
Yeah, maybe that was my point. Yeah. For you, it was like our first date. And I was like,
we did not have sex on our first date, to clarify.
No, I know that. Yeah. But I'm saying for you, for your first date.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
It was, for you were like, that's the man I'm going to marry. And you're saying for me, was it like, when we had sex for the first time, and then I was like, okay, yeah, now we're husband and wife. Yeah. I mean, I do think we've talked kind of about, this concept of ownership before. I mean, I don't think that's a dirty word in a marriage, right? I mean, you need to, the husband and the spouse need to take ownership over one another, right? And I know that's like, I'm probably saying this in a way that's going to like make some people angry no matter how I say it, but that's okay. But because you're not going to care about what you don't own. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So it's like a rental car.
Right. So right. Yeah. Don't ever buy a rental car. So, once you have kind of, you got to get to that point of like ownership. Like, now I feel ownership over this person.
Yeah.
And I think sex plays a role in that. Right. The two bodies, one, like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe somebody can school me, make me see it different, but that's kind of how I see it right now.
Yeah. No, I think that was probably definitely more the intent of sex than recreational.
Yeah. What's it supposed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people ideally wouldn't be getting married to people they're not in a married relationship with, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the model.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. All right. So what did we figure out here? You were like, I'm marrying you the day that you met me and we went on a first date. And then I'm like, this is my wife now from the first time we had sex.
I guess. This
Which
is my first time
like
hearing.
Like a month, 2 months. I don't know what it was.
Gosh, no.
No?
You didn't even kiss me for like 3 months.
Was it 3 months? I always thought it was like a month.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Being so like traditional even back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was a while. So
it was a while, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And when I questioned you, do you remember what you said?
Is this a trick question?
No. If you don't remember, that's fine.
I don't think I remember.
Well, I asked you, not at the time, but a couple of years later, like, why the heck? Like, because I was like, I mean, clearly I was wrong. He doesn't like me. Like, and you were like, no, I respected you.
Yes. I remember that now.
Yes.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah, I did.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think because I've always kind of had this, I'm very conscious about what's moral. At least I try to be. None of us are perfect, right? We are going to make bad decisions. We are going to do wrong things. We are going to do immoral things because we are imperfect people, right? So I'm not saying this. I don't want people hearing me say that like I am some like perfect, I've never get it wrong individual. That's not the case.
No.
But I think I have always kind of had this sense of I wanted to do the right thing and I want to be more, moral. And I think that's where that kind of came out of in our relationship. I was like, I really care about this girl.
Right.
And I don't, I don't want to be disrespectful to her. Right.
Yeah. Because I had known other girls that you dated and I was not getting the same information from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Not so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Yeah. If you asked the girl that set us up and,
which is really interesting, right? Because I think, I started dating girls when I was, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, 17, until you and I met, I had a few girls in my life off and on. And, like at what point did I kind of like, it is kind of an interesting question because I always did want to do the right thing, but clearly with them, I was like, like, was that just because I matured a little bit maybe and I was seeing it a little bit
in
different?
like the 4 months between your last girlfriend and me? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. But it is kind of interesting. Like what was the switch that like I've cared more about you and wanted to be very conscious of how respectful I was being versus...
Clearly you just knew I was the one.
I was the one. Maybe subconsciously. Maybe that was it.
It was the same. You had the same feeling. You just didn't verbalize it like I did.
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
But yeah, I told everybody that asked me how our date was. I was like, sounds silly. That's the man I'm going to marry. And then 3 months later, I was like, all right, maybe I was wrong. I don't know.
Because you were thinking I didn't care for you. Yeah.
I was like, maybe we're just friends. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
anyways.
Yeah. All right. Did we beat up on this topic enough? We talk about it?
I think
so. I mean, you have the question. We would like to understand.
I have the burning question.
Why
I need more
Lori,
information.
The transformed wife, marry her husband if she did not love him or have butterflies for him.
Yeah.
So we need to find the full video. Hopefully it has a context, or maybe she will just tell us.
Yeah, I mean that would be amazing. I'm really invested in understanding.
Yeah.
Because clearly there's a good story there.
Yeah.
And clearly they have figured some stuff out. So I would like to know. I have questions.
Okay. Well, maybe she'll grant that and tell the backstory. It'd be interesting. And like I said, Lori, if you're listening to this, come on and talk with us.
Please.
I'd love that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have nearly as many years as they do.
No. Yeah.
She's got to have good information.
Probably some good information there. Yeah. And again, things we're going to disagree on. I already know what some of those things are.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We can have respectful conversation and respectful disagreement, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm just talking from a marital point of view, like something's going on there for 44 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to know what.
No doubt.
What's the secret sauce?
Because, we've only been together 30 plus years, right? So like, what is the thing that we're going to maybe run into that like, maybe I look at her and I'm like, her view is stupid, right? but then like maybe just because I haven't been married 40 years yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's entirely possible. And I think it's good to be self-aware enough
Yeah.
to kind of be able to say that like, hey, I don't know everything, even though maybe I feel like I know a lot at this point. Like that's just good self-awareness to kind of realize that like there's still stuff you can probably learn.
Never stop learning.
Yeah. So, you know, I would be open to that, you know, just kind of maybe, I don't know. All right. Well, good enough. I think we're coming up on like 55 minutes or something like that. So,
All right.
guess we'll wrap this thing up.
Sounds good.
All right. See you guys on the next one.
Bye.